Hello, everyone, and welcome to Maximize Excellence. My name is Lori Harris, and I'll be your host today. I want to thank also Lynn Whitesell, who's in the audience today. She is my business partner, and we are managing partners of Harris Whitesell Consulting. She'll also be in the chat room as well. And also, I would like to thank our partner and producer, Brian Tard Barnett, who's the president of Bits and Pieces Production. Today, I'm excited to welcome our guest, Tom Morris. Dr. Tom Morris is a native of North Carolina and a graduate of UNC Chapel Hill, where he was Moorhead Keynes Scholar and the recipient of a double PhD from Yale University. He has gone from being the most popular professor at the University of Notre Dame, where he taught for 15 years, to now serving as the world's most active public philosopher, authoring over 30 books, including national business bestsellers, while bringing the wisdom of the ages to many of the biggest and most successful companies in the world in over 1,200 public talks. He is author of books like True Success, If Aristotle Ran General Motors, Philosophy for Dummies, If Harry Potter Ran General Electric, Socrates in Silicon Valley, The Oasis Within, and his newest book about challenge and change, difficulty and delight, which is called Plato's Lemonade Stand. Tom has work has been covered by television networks like ABC, NBC, CNN, and in most major newspapers and magazines around the world, including the New York Times and The Economist. His philosophical discoveries are changing lives and revolutionizing businesses all over the globe. He's also been described as the world's happiest philosopher. And I am just very joyful to have my friend and my guru. He is like a mentor to me. And Tom, I'm excited to have you as our guest today. Thank you for joining us.
You bet, Lori. It's great. It's great to be with you. You're doing some exciting things, and I'm just happy to be along for the ride today.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Tom, I really do want to dig in, and I would love to. I'm not seeing you, though, on our screen.
Okay, I'm seeing myself, but not you. So
Okay.
we're playing a game of hide and seek with each other.
I think so. I do. I think so, but that's okay. We can get this fixed pretty quickly. And let me do this. I've got you up on the screen here, it looks like.
Good.
And
we're pioneering all this new technology, aren't we?
We sure are. And I appreciate you and your patience. Yeah. Give me just a half a second here.
Yeah, Socrates didn't have to worry about all this, right?
He just
showed up. He walked down the street and a bunch of people showed up and they started philosophizing.
And I say, let's do that. Let's put a call out and have one of those big events where everybody just kind of shows up.
Yeah. In fact, I was almost going to say the only thing he had to worry about was a sandal blowout, but then again, he went barefoot, so he didn't even have to worry about the technology of his sandals.
I love it. I love it. I love it. All righty. Give me one moment here. All righty. So we're going to keep moving along here with the audio, Tom, and then our producer is working on getting the video to go live. So let's just kick in and get started, and we'll edit out all that airspace that we just had. How's that?
That sounds good. Even though the philosophers did often advise a good amount of silence as a prelude to any useful philosophical chat. So we've done that.
I love it. I love it. A little bit of meditative space there, right?
There you go.
So, Tom, I would love to start with having you discuss and share with us one of your more recent philosophy books, which is the Plato's Lemonade Stand.
Yeah.
And you talk a lot, there's a lot of leadership insight in this book. Yeah. Why are these insights so important for maximizing excellence in leadership in this book?
Well, it's an interesting thing. You go to business school to learn to be a leader, and you go to one of the top business schools in the country. And one of the things they hardly ever talk about is how to deal with disruptive change, how to deal with uncertainty, how to deal with failures and bad surprises. There aren't a lot of courses being offered future leaders about this kind of stuff. And I had given 2 or 3 talks to the leadership team of a major credit card bank years ago. And one day I got a call, and one of the top executives said, look, I don't know if you heard, but we're being bought by a much larger institution, and the sale is going to happen in just a few months. We have, I think it was 6,000 credit card people. They already have 8,000 credit card people. We know they're not going to end up with 15,000 credit card people. So most people here don't even think they're going to have a job after this deal goes through. Morale is low. People are scared. There's high anxiety everywhere in the organization. Productivity is way down. Have you ever talked about how to deal with difficult change? And I said, no, I actually haven't, but you want me to put together something for you? And I'm sure the philosophers have had something interesting to say. And this lady said to me, sure, how about in 2 months, you come and give us a talk on how to deal with difficulties. Okay. So I go do a quick search of all the great philosophers. And all of a sudden I realized, as a kid growing up in Durham, North Carolina, I must have heard 100 times people say, when life hands you lemons, make lemonade. When life hands you lemons, Tommy, make lemonade, over and over. But nobody ever said how. I mean, it was a great metaphor, right? Taking difficulty and turning it into something delightful. As a matter of fact, leaders have been told for decades now, be resilient, but when something bad happens, bounce back. Then about 10 or 15 years ago, people started talking about grit or determination or persistence. When tough things start happening, soldier on, persist, grit your teeth and go. But the lemonade advice was really different from this. It's like when life hands you something sour and even bitter, make something sweet and delightful out of it. Okay, that sounds good, but how do we do it? Well, it turns out the great philosophers had a ton of really good advice that all leaders need to hear. And not just the leaders, but their people. The people in a companies. Often now when I give a talk, like for that particular bank, I gave a talk to their top 750 people. Can we show the video of this talk to everybody in the organization? Yes, we all need to learn how to deal with change, and we need to learn how to deal with uncertainty. And I've come to think it's one of the leaders' chief requirements to lead people well through difficulties and through uncertainty. So that book came out right before the lockdown in the pandemic. It came out in, I think it was late January 2020. And within a month or two, people were saying, what are you, this genius that knew we were going to have this global pandemic and we needed to know how to deal with all this disruption? I said, look, I've been working on this book I've been writing it for 15 years. I've rewritten it 25 times. It's had 6 different titles. It was finally just ready to come out. So no, I'm not a genius at all, but I'm using the advice of a lot of people who were. And so the book has made a huge difference in the lives of a lot of people and a lot of companies since the pandemic started. It's been fun to be able to pass on this advice to people. It's made me feel very useful in a time when a lot of public speakers were sidelined due to all the big conventions being postponed or canceled. But I started doing Zooms right away. I started using all the other virtual media right away, and so I've been pretty busy working with companies since late March of 2020 in these virtual platforms, and we've seen it to be just as effective as the in-person meetings have been.
And so, Tom, what I love in this book, by the way, because there's lots of analogies to, chewing on the lemons and digesting, and it just goes on, and I'm finding the sugar and the dash of flavor. But what I love at the end is the tidbit that you share, and that is the active ingredients for the lemonade. It's the lemonade recipe. And in the end, you actually give us that recipe, but not only that, you also give us the preparation. And why is preparation so key to maximizing excellence?
Well, it's an interesting thing. Look at athletics, for example. Any sporting event never just happens. People prepare for a long time in advance to take the most and make the most of the opportunity. Preparation in life seems to be one of the forgotten things. In fact, I had a little exchange on social media with people the other day that was really interesting. A friend of mine had suggested that we have this history in philosophy of saying, what would Socrates do? What would Aristotle do? What would Gandhi do? And a few years ago, in certain religious circles, it was, what would Jesus do? And people usually ask a question like this when they're facing a really difficult situation, right? What would my moral mentor do in this situation? What would my grandmother do? What would the person I admire the most in this world, what would he or she do? And I made the point that, suppose I'm playing a pickup basketball game. It's not going too well for my team. And I say to myself in the middle of the game, what would LeBron James do? Or what would Michael Jordan do? Well, the answer, of course, would be he'd dunk over all these guys and take control of the game. Of course, at the age of 69, I'm not going to be doing that. It's an interesting thing about what would Gandhi do or what would Socrates do. We usually ask it about a specific circumstance. Like the Christian question, what would Jesus do? Well, what he would do is he would pray a lot. He'd spend a lot of time alone. He'd hang out with like-minded people. He'd get his own thoughts straight, and he'd prepare himself for the situation. And often when we ask the question about our favorite moral mentor, what would Martin Luther King do here? Right? What would Lincoln do? We're just focused on a situation. But we ought to be asking that question throughout our days about their preparation. Because if we're not prepared as they were prepared over the long run for dealing with difficulties, we're not going to be able to pull a rabbit out of a hat all of a sudden in a challenging situation. So this thing about emulating your moral mentors, do it on a regular basis, then you'll be able to do it when it really counts. Preparation is so important.
It is. What's exciting about this book? And I'm hearing myself echo here. There we go. What's exciting about this book is that, one, it's fun. Two, it's highly insightful. And three, I really think it's practical in that people can relate very easily to this, but apply it to some of the most complex situations in business and in leadership.
You're absolutely right, Lori. I mean, the interesting thing about folk wisdom, and I think when life hands you lemons, make lemonade is a part of our national folk wisdom, and you hear it in other parts of the world as well. The interesting thing about folk wisdom is, unlike slogans that people invent, which can sometimes be glib, they look insightful, but they're kind of shallow. They really aren't as insightful as they on the surface appear. A lot of folk wisdom has a lot of depth to it because people have lived the advice and passed it on for generations and generations. And so I decided I'm going to dig deep into this lemons to lemonade metaphor. And it turns out that it can be applied pretty much everywhere in life. And what it's about is transformation. When you understand, and I use the analogy of the ancient medieval enterprise of alchemy, which a lot of people say is, the precursor of modern science. And alchemy, a lot of people say, well, it's an outmoded, pre-scientific, superstitious stuff. People tried to turn lead into gold, and they tried to come up with an elixir of life that would make people immortal. But basically, it was about fundamental transformation. It was a metaphor for metamorphosis, turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. An ordinary metal into an extraordinary metal, an ordinary life into an immortal or eternal life. And by the way, it's good to see you on the screen. We've worked out our technical issues.
We did.
But that's why once you understand that lemonade making isn't about just a sweet drink, it's about transformation. And once you focus on that, you realize how important it is in all of our lives, both personally and professionally. And I came to realize that we're not going to do it right at work unless we're also learning to do it in our personal lives. It's all about making change in positive ways.
So, Tom, one last question about this book, and I'm going to move on to the next one.
I see you got a copy of it there.
I do. I love your book.
Simultaneous showings.
By the way, if I may.
Oh my goodness, that's great.
I've got lots. I've got handfuls of your books.
That's great.
With this book in general, change is such a fearful word in the common conditioning of our lives. So change is not to be feared. Change is something that's quite beautiful.
Yeah.
Just briefly talk about change.
The first company that asked me to come and talk on change, as a philosopher, the first thing I did was go looking for philosophical books of the past on change or articles, essays on change. I couldn't find any.
Wow.
Because the ancients didn't even think of it as a topic unto itself. It was so common. Now, Heraclitus said in about 500 BC, he said, things are always changing. And sometimes it can be translated, everything is always changing. It's almost like maybe it's going to take a while for fish to write a book about water or for birds to write a book about air. If it's all around all the time and never goes away, never think of it as a distinctive channel, right? So the ancients would write books about the ups and downs of fortune, the ups and downs of life, the challenges that death can bring, the challenges that adventurers face as they go discover new parts of the world. In the ancient world, people were writing about topics like that, and you can distill from what they said about those challenges what applies generally to change. So there was in ancient China, the I Ching, the Book of Changes, but other than that, there was not a lot in the ancient world that was directly focused on change. That's why I, as a philosopher, had to do a lot of detective work. And boy, what I discovered was pretty amazing.
So do you think that this word has become prominent for us because of technology?
Yeah. I do, because the pace of change now, driven largely by technology, it's almost like you're not aware of the air around you until the wind starts to blow really hard. And then all of a sudden you become aware of air. Well, it's the same way with change. With gentle change going on at a sort of what had become a normal pace in the modern world, nobody was really thinking about change. But all of a sudden, with the whirlwind of technology, the wind is blowing on your face in a new way. And people say, whoa, what is this and how do I deal with it? It's like where I live at the coast. When the wind whips up a little too high, you want to go to the Weather Channel and find out what's on the way here, right? And that's the way we are now about change. Once we focus on change, we've got so many things in our backgrounds as kids where change was a negative thing. You better change that outfit, young lady. You better change that attitude, young man. If you don't do right at school, we're going to change your school system. You're not going to like the school we're going to send you to. Early on in life, there are a lot of difficult changes that kids were scared about, or that came across in a very negative way. So as adults, have you ever enjoyed changing a tire, changing a diaper? I mean, as adults, when the head of a company says, oh, we got some big changes coming our way, there's a lot deep in our brains that just goes negative. And yet, when you can understand the positive role of change in all of human history, in any individual's life, we wouldn't be where we are today without thousands, tens of thousands of positive changes that we've gone through along the way. And if you can give people the right perspective, in fact, most of wisdom is about perspective. And so if you can help people to get the right perspective on change, all of a sudden it's liberating. And one of my favorite groups of philosophers in the ancient world, the Stoics, one of the Stoics, a guy named Epictetus, who had actually been a slave and was given his freedom, became a public philosopher, one of my role models. He says, you know what? I used to be a slave, but guess what? So is everybody else. We're all enslaved to false beliefs and bad attitudes and emotions that aren't helpful. I, as a philosopher, want to help you free yourself from all those chains that enslave you right now and keep you from doing and being your best. Well, what an attitude about what philosophy is, right?
Yeah, I love it. So what I want to say now is I love also in your book about lemonade that you have built upon many of your other books. And one I want to point out is your book, True Success, A New Philosophy of Excellence.
Oh, yeah.
And in this book, I love this because you talk about a joyful approach to work, to love, and play that restores the missing ingredient in life. And with this book, this is the first book of yours that I bought personally.
Oh, good.
And I have your 7 C's card that I carry in my wallet.
Oh, that's
still
great.
To this day. And in publishing this book, you became the first modern philosopher to grapple with the issues of success in business and life, viewed through the lens of ideas that have stood the test of time. Yeah. So what makes this book a favorite among your readers then and now? Because I can share with you why, but I want to hear.
Yeah, well, you know, I have heard more people say about that book, I've read that book 12 times, or I've read that book 7 times, or one time I was in a hotel lobby and a guy came up to me. Turns out he was one of the top executives from a global consulting firm. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, Professor Tom Morris. I said, yeah, that's me. And he said, I got to show you my wallet. And nobody had ever approached me in a public place and said, I got to show you my wallet. I thought, what is this? He pulls out his black leather wallet. And he said, before he opens his wallet, he says to me, I've prided myself for many years only carrying 2 things in my wallet. I carry my driver's license. I carry a major credit card. That's all I carry. I don't have this big hulking thing, you know. It's just 2 things, you know, simplicity. But he said, I heard you 6 years ago talk about true success. You talked about 7 universal conditions for success. You gave out a laminated wallet card with those 7 C's of success on it. And he opens his wallet and there are 3 things: driver's license, credit card, 7 C's card.
Right.
He says, that's how important these ideas are to me. Mm-hmm. And I said, really? Tell me more about that. He said, basically, I've been living these things my whole life to get to the point I am right now in my global business. He said, but I didn't know how to articulate the ideas. As simple as they are, you put them into words for me. Now I can teach them to other people. Mm-hmm. I don't have to just go looking around hoping to find people who do these things naturally like I did, but I can actually teach them to other people. So thank you for a simple framework of ideas that's teachable. So now I can not only have my own success, but bring everybody else along with me.
I love it. And one of the things in here is you talk about the 7th is the capacity to enjoy. Now, mind you, recently we are beginning to learn that we only need really about 20% of joy each and every day to really have contentment.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And so this is the big thing right now. Everybody wants that contentment. They want that feeling, right? But the 7 C's starts with conception, that wanting, that desire. And we end in that joy, that enjoyment, that contentment, and that capacity.
Yeah, that's right.
And the journey for that.
Yeah, it's so important. They're all linked to each other, these 7 conditions for success. In fact, just a few days ago, I did a post across social media on some books I come across over the years, because I've studied goal setting for 30 years now, 35 years maybe. And I occasionally come across a book, Living Without Goals or Goalless Living, where the author thinks that has been really impressed with a certain form of Zen Buddhism and thinks that to be a good Zen Buddhist, he's got to live without goals and just go with the flow and hope for the best and all this. And I've heard people worry during the pandemic about setting goals because they think, well, it's such a time of uncertainty. It's such a time of disruptive change. Why should I lock myself into specific goals rather than just being open to whatever comes my way? And I said, look, goal setting is not about locking you down. It's about opening you up. It's not like it's an alternative to serendipity and synchronicity, but it's a way to go find serendipity and synchronicity. If Ben Franklin wanted to fly that kite and have lightning strike that little key or whatever, he's got to go out during the storm, right? Goal setting gets us going, gets us moving out into the world, and it's never engraved in stone. You can write it in erasable pencil what your goals are. They're not to stay with you necessarily the rest of your life. They're to get you moving, to get you going, and to establish a framework in your mind where you can notice things that cross your path that may be relevant to your own good, things you might not have noticed had you not had clear goals. So that first C, a clear conception of what we want, actually sets you up to enjoy for a process that can be enjoyed. And you're right, Lori, you don't have to live in a state of constant bliss. Nobody can do that. We're not built to do that. But if you can cultivate a capacity to enjoy what can be enjoyed on even a difficult day, that makes the day not so difficult as it would have otherwise been.
And so in this book, what I love on page 281, you talk about the epilogue, the true success and meaning of life. Each of us has a lot to give to this world while we are here. That uniqueness. Right now, we are living in this conversation of diversity, inclusion, belonging, justice. Right now, that's very powerful. People are coming into better understanding themselves, their strengths, their motivators, their types. People data is becoming very relevant these days to help people shift and move through these 7 C's. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. Yeah. And why now, Tom? Why now? Why?
It is interesting, right? That people are being shaken up out of too many people seem to sleepwalk through their lives. And you can only do that when there aren't obstacles in your way, right? Mm-hmm. If you're a sleepwalker and you keep knocking over chairs and tables, you're not going to stay asleep. Well, the thing is about what we're going through right now is that a lot of people have been shaken up. A lot of people have been awakened. I have a friend who coaches a lot of presidents of companies. Mm-hmm. And he said that for the first few years, all he did was bring me your problems and I'll help you solve them. And then he started to see patterns amongst the problems that presidents of companies would bring him, both professional and personal problems. And he said, you know what? It didn't take me long to realize it all comes down to self-knowledge, self-awareness, and self-management. And he said, if you're more aware of who you are and you manage that well, you're going to avoid most of the problems that people bring to me. So I think we're going through a time where people have been thrown back on themselves and their own resources in ways they're not accustomed to. They've become a little more self-aware. A lot of people I know, and they're becoming more self-managing because they don't have their normal routines to kind of give them, the channels through which they flow. They've got to create their own, routines during the pandemic. And, those 7 C's of success. When I wrote the book, True Success, it was my first non-academic book of philosophy, my first sort of broad book. I launched it on Live with Regis and Kathy Lee, and I was on a book tour all over the country. People were getting really excited about it. Well, I gave so many talks on that topic that about 2 or 3 or 4 years later, I realized, there's a skill or an art associated with each of these conditions. So I ended up writing the book, The Art of Achievement. And a lady who had reviewed the book for a big financial publication, she called me up and she said, hey, they asked me to, I had reviewed True Success, and I had seen her review of True Success. It was a great, deep understanding of the book, True Success. She had done a great job. And she said, they asked me to review your second book, Art of Achievement. I suddenly see it's about the 7 C's. And I think, oh no, this guy, like a lot of best-selling authors, he's just going to rehash what he said in the first book. The second book's just going to be a rehash. She said, there's hardly a paragraph in common with your first book. It's all new stuff. And I said, that's because I've been talking about it across industries in every size business you can imagine for several years now, hearing people's stories, seeing how people can get better at these things. And I had to write a book about that. And so even in Plato's Lemonade Stand, you get a chapter on the 7 C's, because I talk in Plato's Lemonade Stand about 3 arts: the art of self-control. When something bad happens, don't panic. There's some methods the philosophers have of getting some inner peace going, despite what's going on around you. Secondly, the art of positive action. Okay, now you're calm, you're at peace a little bit. You need to take some positive action of your own into the new situation. And then the art of achievement. You don't want to just take action. You want it to be successful, right? You don't want to just be stirring some lemonade ingredients. You want to actually create successfully some good lemonade. So the 7 C's bear out in this. So there's a short chapter on the 7 C's even in this book. And again, there'll be some things that I'll say. For example, when I was writing my novels, which is another story, they came to me like a movie playing in my head. All I did was type fast. But one of the characters in the novels talks about the 7 C's and says things I had never thought of about these conditions for success. It looks like we shop at the same bookstore.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, well, good. I'm pleased to hear that. So amazing. So these things have been transformative for me, and I hope they have been for you as well.
Yeah. And so let's shift. Let's move in that direction, because this story that you have around your novel series is profound, Tom. And there's a lot of authors out there, and their passion for writing and their purpose for writing is often life event, whatever.
Yeah.
But this series here came to you in a dream.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It has turned into 7 books: The Golden Palace, The Stone of Giza, The Viper of Storm, The King and the Prince, The Mysterious Village, The Magic Ring, The Ancient Scroll. And it all starts with
when this book came to me as a waking dream, I had no idea it was the prologue to a big series of 7 subsequent volumes. I had no idea what was happening. I had breakfast one morning. It was February of 2011. I remember I wish I remembered the exact day, but I remember the month and the year. I just finished breakfast, nothing hallucinogenic. I was just having toast and peanut butter or something and some coffee. But all of a sudden, it's like I've always been a daydreamer. But this was like the most powerful daydream of my entire life. All of a sudden, in the kitchen, around the kitchen table, it's almost like I'm in the desert in Egypt in 1934, of all random places and times. And there's an old man leaned up against got some rolled up, very colorful blankets up against the palm tree. And he's leaning back, and there's a young boy. I can't tell how old he is. Turns out he's 13, just turned 13. And they're having their uncle and nephew, and they're having a conversation. And the uncle says, I've been wanting to talk to you about a bunch of stuff, and I think you're old enough now to really understand it. You want to think together on this trip? And the boy says, yeah, that'd be great. In the course of their conversation, they're at this oasis, and the boy says, I really love this oasis. I wish we didn't have to leave. And the old man says, well, you can take an oasis with you wherever you go in life. And that's kind of what launches the book. The boy says, what does that mean? And they get into this amazing conversation. So the old man is my Gandalf. He's my Dumbledore. He's the font of wisdom in these stories. And so I got 10 pages that first morning. I immediately ran upstairs from the kitchen and started typing, and the movie paused so that I could catch up with what was going on. And so I ended up having 10 pages that I posted on a Huffington Post. And within minutes, I started getting emails from people all over the world. What is this? This is great. Is this part of a new book? And I would write back to people and say, well, I don't know what it is. It's just a vision I had this morning. When Mary Shelley wrote the book Frankenstein, she said it came to her as a waking dream. That's what I would say about this. She lived before movies, so she couldn't say it was a movie in my head. That's what it was. And so I didn't know that over a 5-year period, this movie would play pretty much every week. There was a two-week hiatus at one point, right before something important was going to happen in the fourth numbered volume, and I thought, I can't make this up. If the movie stops, I don't know what I'm going to do. But I finally had it. That's an interesting story into itself. It was going to be, I could tell something big was about to happen to the characters in these stories. And the stories are all about excellence. They're all about virtue. They're all about wisdom. And something big was going to happen. The movie stopped playing for 2 or 3 days. Okay, that's normal. 4 or 5 days wasn't. 6 or 7 days wasn't. It went for 2 weeks. I panicked. I grew increasingly panicked every day until finally, after 2 weeks of no more movie, I said, okay, maybe this was just for me. There aren't supposed to be books at all. If it's just for me, I've had the best experience I've ever had with ideas and stories. I'm so grateful for it. There doesn't have to be any more. And as soon as I said that, the movie started playing again. This whole Hindu idea, concentrate on the process, not the results, and be open and get out of your own way. Allow things to happen. You don't always have to be making things happen. Sometimes you need to allow things.
Tom, in this series, what I love is he learns the value of people.
Yeah.
He really, as he grows and as he experiences and as he journeys, he connects and he loves.
Yeah.
And he also discovers his own beauty and his own loves and his own strengths.
That's right.
But what's really beautiful is how he maximizes those relationships.
Oh, it plugs into, and of course, I didn't have any intentions about this at all. My intention was just to do what I was supposed to do and write all this down.
Yeah.
But now that I reread the stories, I see one of the greatest themes in all of human literature has been the power of partnership. Even Aristotle, in his book, The Politics, you can distill a formula for human greatness. It's people, plural, in partnership, a certain relationship with a shared purpose. People in partnership for a shared purpose. That's the simple formula you can distill from Aristotle. And that ends up being the formula of my books. Nobody is a hero by himself or herself. There's some really important women characters in the books that end up being some of my most important, some of my favorite characters in the stories. But there are people who are maximizing their personal power in ways that most of us only dream about, and that gave rise to superhero movies and all that. But there's more in us than we tend to think. That's why we have always loved the stories of the supernatural and the stories of the comic book heroes, because we have this deep suspicion we're capable of much more than we're ordinarily called upon to give. We're capable of much more than we tend to think we can give. Mm-hmm. And the books kind of open us up. As you get deeper into the series, things begin to happen that you would never have believed early in the series. But by then, you know the characters well enough to say, oh, I get it. She can do that. Mm-hmm. She's capable of that. And there's these wonderful things that I think empower readers to think differently about the synchronicities and serendipities and coincidences of their lives and the people whose paths they cross and who come into their lives. These are all opportunities we need to be making the most of, and not just kind of blithely flowing along down the river, kind of waving at things as we go by and hoping for the best. But we can actually set goals together that change the world. And that's the ultimate lesson of Plato's lemonade stand, not just dealing with the change that comes to us, but making the change that only we can make.
And so we're going to be wrapping up here. I got a couple more questions.
Sure.
Motivate us. What can we look forward to with some of your upcoming work?
Oh, I've got some. So I finished 2 books during the pandemic that one I'd written for 30 years on and off. It's called The Wisdom Collector, Making Your Way in an Uncertain World. It collects all the practical wisdom from the Tao Te Ching, from the Analects of Confucius, across cultures, through the centuries, and brings it all together. So you see the 7 C's everywhere. I don't make up these frameworks of ideas. That book was generated by people saying, where'd you get these ideas about success in your book, True Success? Well, here's the original stuff. So I'll quote a passage and then discuss the passage, quote another passage. So you get Confucius ideas about goal setting, about consistency and harmony, about confidence. You get Lao Tzu, you got a medieval Islamic theologian, you get a Jesuit philosopher in the Renaissance. You get all these amazing people, and you can be one of them sitting in a room with like a seminar of the wisest people who've ever lived. So there's that book. And there's another book. I came to realize that Mary Shelley, in her book Frankenstein, wrote the greatest cautionary tale about success ever written. In this short novel, she portrays a brilliant individual who has tremendous talent, who sets clear goals and pursues them with confidence, and thereby unleashes onto the world a monster he can't control. Whoa, what's this about? So I read her book probably 12 or 15 times, and then discovered a second novel of hers that most people haven't heard of. It's about a virus in the 21st century that kills everybody.
Oh.
Written in 1826, set in this century. Yeah. It's about a virus. But it ends up not being about a virus, really. It's about how people deal with the virus. And it's about the same personality characteristics you can see in Mr. Frankenstein, Victor Frankenstein, the laboratory scientist. It ends up preparing us for AI, for genetic engineering, for all kinds of stuff that we face in our lives. And it prepares us for more than that. Why do smart people do stupid things? Why do so many leaders in our time do self-destructive and damaging things? Well, Mary Shelley seemed to understand, because she was around a lot of exceptional people in her time who, with the wrong motives, means, and methods, took their tremendous talent and created havoc in the world, chaos in the world. So my book is called The Frankenstein Factor: Monster Success and Massive Failure. And it's about how to avoid that in our own businesses and our own lives.
So when do these come out? When can we?
Well, my agent is showing The Frankenstein Factor around to publishers right now. Nice. And the Wisdom Collector will be shortly after that. But there's another book I'm starting this month. And that's a book about how uncertainty can be a gift in our lives. Ooh. So I'm excited about all these ideas.
I love it. Well, I look forward to it. And as always, I'll keep in touch with that. So let's end this. I want you to give 3 actions leaders can take today to begin to maximize excellence.
Yeah. First of all, read books. Yeah. And they don't have to be mine, but I would highly recommend. But it's almost like you want to say read more, but read carefully, right? Read well. It's almost like, you got to eat, but eat carefully, eat well, right? Same thing with reading. The leaders I know who make the wisest decisions have experienced not just business books or not just philosophers' books, but good fiction, like my novels. Fiction, I think it was a Google study that reading fiction creates empathy like nothing else. It sparks the imagination. It sparks a sense of empathy for what people's lives are like from the inside out. So I would recommend that leaders read not just nonfiction, not just leadership books, not just business books, but other kinds of books, right? Psychology and philosophy and history, but read fiction. Very few leaders that I know make it a practice to work in some good novels. I mean, Jane Austen alone will teach you how not to rush to judgment about other people.
Right.
Her characters are always misinterpreting people's thoughts and actions and words. And you, as a leader, you have to learn sometimes to sit back and put it on pause, not to rush to judgment about what's going on in the mind of another person. So I'd say read more and read fiction. I'd say engage more in self-reflection, and not only to learn about yourself from what you can discover, but listen to what other people are trying to tell you about you. We don't pay enough attention to the feedback we get from the world. We need to know ourselves better. So reading for empathy, for imagination, exercises in self-knowledge. And Aristotle pointed out something. I would encourage every leader to cultivate the quality of courage, because courage is not just for policemen, firemen, soldiers. Courage is an everyday requirement. If we're to embody any of our higher values, our ideals, or any of our other virtues like honesty, we'll squelch those things unless we have a measure of courage that is right for everyday life. If I could encourage, and see, that word itself includes the word courage. If I could encourage people from the core, the heart, to bring more courage to their choices, to their decisions. Don't do what's easy. Don't do what you feel forced into a corner to do what you know is right, because that tends to have the long-term benefits. So both the reading, the self-awareness, self-analysis, and the cultivation of courage, those three things alone can be really transformative in any leader's life.
Today has been wonderful. It has been powerful. It has been encouraging. It's been inspiring. It's motivating. There's so many words I want to share with you. Tom, we want to absolutely thank you for coming on to Maximize Excellence. You are one of our early interviews in this process of getting out there and sharing with the world how powerful talent management is in business.
Yeah,
and leadership in general, the power of leadership. And when we learn that it's not who we are, but what we do.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely right. When I first got into what I'm doing now in the mid-90s, I realized everybody was talking about product quality or process efficiency. Nobody was talking about the spirit of the people who do the work. And that is so vital. Nothing else is going to work unless we have good people who believe in what they're doing and are trying to maximize their energies and their activities every day. People in partnership for a shared purpose, that's powerful.
So how might people connect with you? We've got your website up here, but how else can people connect with you and philosophize with you?
I'm on social media. I'm on social media almost every day: LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, sometimes Instagram. But Tom V, as in Victor, TomVMorris.com. My website is where they can click on those social media links and they can contact me. There's a contact page. I'd love to be of service to anyone who's watching this podcast. Free advice: come to a philosopher, right? Or you could have me come in and work with your leadership team, or by Zoom at this point, or whatever. I love interacting with people because I want somebody to ask me, why do you read so many emails every day yourself? And I said, if I just read Plato and Aristotle but didn't read what people were going through right now, I'd have half the formula. I have to understand what people are going through. I can help them, but they can also help me.
And I will share with our audience out there and those that get to watch this down the road, I will share with you that my experience with you has been minimal but highly impactful.
Oh, that's great.
Every time I've ever asked to meet with you or talk with you or share with you, you have made yourself available. And for Tom, I'm great. My gratitude and the level of appreciation is it's deep and wide for me. There are few people in this world that share leadership, that share out and that gift out their talents, their expertise. And you are a role model for that. So thank you. And you truly are our modern day philosopher in my mind, in our minds.
Well, it's a blessing for me. Thank you, Lori, for saying that.
Yes. Thank you again. And for everyone that's out there, I want you to think about this. At the end of each and every day, are you able to ask this one question? And that is, did I do my best today to maximize excellence? And so thank you, everyone, and have a great, great day. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Maximize Excellence. Visit our events page on our website for details on upcoming podcasts, and visit our YouTube channel to listen to past episodes. And remember to ask yourself at the end of each day, did I do my best to maximize excellence today?